Welcome to On the Way, a podcast about life. But not just any life, it's about life with Jesus. Why do people follow Jesus, and how do they get started? And what difference does following Jesus make in their lives? Before Christians had a name, they were known as people of the way, people who followed Jesus' teachings. People have been on the way for nearly 2,000 years now. During the podcast, we explore the ways that people become followers of Jesus and why, and what difference following Jesus makes in their lives. On the Way is produced by the Baptist Standard, a donor-supported provider of news, opinion, and resources for living like Jesus. I'm Eric Black, editor of the Baptist Standard. I'm glad you're with us today. We have with us today J.R. Harris on the podcast. J.R., we're grateful that you're with us today.
Thanks so much, Eric. Thanks for having me today. It's really just an honor and a pleasure to be here and spend some time with you answering any type of questions that you have about Riverside or just faith and my profession. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. So my first question is, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, so my name's JR. I am from a small town in rural southern West Virginia called White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. I am from a very eclectic family. I'm from a multiracial family. My mother is from the Azores, the Portuguese islands off of the mainland of Portugal. And my father was African American. He was in the military, in the Air Force for 21 years. He was a loadsmaster in C5, C-130, so he was very good with numbers, very good with math. So he was in the military during the time of civil rights and things, but was a farm boy from West Virginia and graduated high school, and just went on to start his life in the military, and that's how my parents met. And after he retired, we moved to West Virginia. So after that, went to high school, grew up in West Virginia. Graduated, went to Marshall University, go Thundering Herd, graduated there in 2005, and my undergraduate degree in kinesiology. Went on, did a gap year, served in some missions work in Ghana, West Africa. Enjoyed that with Grace Life Ministries in Burleson, Texas, and really got bit just to want to continue my education. So I did a clinical master's of counseling, and thought that I was going to go the clinical route of counseling, and got bit again by the higher education bug at colleges, universities.
Okay.
So that kind of started my route there. But live here in Pennsylvania now with my amazing wife, Rebecca, and we have two kids. Lylah, she's 6, and Nehemiah, he's 2 years old, going on 20. So yes.
All right. Well, aren't they all?
They are.
Yeah. Well, the focus of our podcast is how you became a follower of Christ and what difference following Jesus makes in your life. So how did you become a follower of Jesus?
It's a great question, Eric. I would say what most would call maybe a late bloomer. When I met my wife, Rebecca, side note, Rebecca grew up in the church and became a believer early on as a child. She's from California, grew up in a church in California. So when she was a little girl, she, came to Christ during middle school. My faith journey was a bit different. I did not come to know Christ and enter into a relationship with Him until about my beginning of the junior year of college. I was at Marshall University, and I was, attending a ministry that it's actually renamed now, Eric. You may be familiar with it, but it was called Campus Crusade for Christ, and now they kind of redubbed it as Cru.
Right.
But I remember I was walking in the student center, and this guy, his name was Garrett Moore, was passing out these flyers for prime time 909 event. Prime time 909 p.m. I'm like, what is this? And come on out to our primetime event. We've got live music. We have a guest speaker. We have, some skits. It's kind of like Saturday Night Live, but it's a Christian version of it, And I'm like, how can you get,
okay,
like that?
Sure.
So I was like, okay, we'll see what this is about. I started going with my roommate Jesse, and we went to our first, primetime event, and I really enjoyed the live music. Wasn't really kind of familiar with contemporary Christian type of music in that setting, but knew that the message was different because at that point there was a director and a couple of staff members there that would rotate on the weekly messages. So that night, a guy who was speaking, his name's Chris, um, was just sharing more about what it looks like, having a relationship with Jesus compared to, thinking about having a relationship with Jesus. Like, what is the difference being in a relationship compared to talking about a relationship? And that just started, me having further conversations, getting involved in a what we call a small group Bible study on campus,
Mm-hmm.
which really allowed me to ask further questions about Christ and really encountering Christ. Um, a little bit about my background is I was not raised in a Christian home. So my father died when I was 11.
Okay.
Actually, I just turned 12. My father passed away. He unexpectedly of a heart attack in his sleep, and he grew up Baptist, and in rural West Virginia, he there's the Baptist way. There's so many denominations, but my dad really suffered through some of his
Mm-hmm.
own struggles and demons, but had a really bad substance abuse and alcohol problem. So um, church and just the priority of what does it look like to pursue Jesus really wasn't kind of taught or really encouraged or discussed. My mother being from Portugal and the Azores, is from a Catholic background, so she wasn't really familiar with the Western Church, and how that really worked out. So my mom had no idea. She became a citizen and improved her language and things and speaks great. But really, from that side of things, we were always, from my dad's unexpected passing until getting into college, we were always playing catch up.
Mm.
Financially, it was a struggle. My sister was born, right before my dad passed away unexpectedly. So here we were, a year and a half year old, and myself, a 12-year old. So it was kind of trial by fire, and
Mm.
growing up quickly, I would say my childhood was pretty slim or pretty quick in regards towards responsibility and helping out, and I didn't become jaded by that or angered by my mom by that. However, how that plays into effect, Eric, was I, I did I did grow very. Uh, I I don't think I was ever connected to Christ, but I
Mm.
grew very frustrated, and I would say I even hated God upon the understanding of my dad's passing and not knowing why.
Yeah.
Because there were so many questions as to why his passing had to happen, why in the timing did it have to happen when it did with my sister's birth, no money, rural
Mm-hmm.
Appalachia.
Yeah.
I'm gonna paint the wall blue or red to you, or purple. But Eric, I mean, we were the only minority biracial family in southern West Virginia at that time. So I mean, there were so many things that we were experiencing cross culturally, spiritually, and emotionally that we hadn't quite had reconciliation with or understanding with. So for me, my heart became very hardened towards God for a very
Yeah.
long time. So I became, I would say, Eric, I became independent. I can do it on my own. I can persevere on my own. I can grit this through my own. I've got grit. I don't really need I'm responsible for myself. I'm responsible for my mom and my sister. I don't need God can't do anything for me that I can't do for myself. That was
Yeah.
my mentality.
Yeah. If you're having to take care of your sister and help your mom with pretty important things at the age of 12, yeah, I suspect you probably felt like and thought, hey, if I could do this, I've got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that for me that for me kind of really gained a response of my mom and just her hard work mentality, because my mom was from a very blue collared
Mm.
mentality island in Portugal. I mean, they were fishermen. They had their own their own shops, and my grandfather was a locksmith and a shoes excuse me, not a locksmith. He made shoes and combat boots and stuff for the military. There in the island. So I mean, for me, when I came to college and when I first encountered Jesus and really what it looked like to experience Jesus or to approach the throne of grace. Um, that wasn't really, expounded upon or explored until I became a junior in college.
So
Um,
that was totally new.
it was.
Wasn't just a
It
little
really
new, it
was.
was totally new.
It was. No, it was really new. It was really new. I didn't know, Eric. I didn't know how to. I don't know how to talk to God, how to pray. I didn't really know the how to pursue a relationship, what it looked like to be, saved through faith, by grace through faith. I had no clue upon any of that at all. The pinnacle for me, Eric, was going into my junior year. Uh, Crew Ministries did something called Big Break, and it was
Okay.
when every spring break they would take a weekly trip each year to spring break, whether it's like Pensacola, Eric, or Daytona Beach, and they would go, and share the gospel with other beachgoers on
Okay.
spring break.
Yeah, like Texas Baptists do Beach Reach.
Yes,
Yeah.
beach reach. There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I remembered, very early on, my discipler, Chad Tidd, who's an amazing man. I love him and his wife to death, Megan. They're great. He is now an operator and owner of a Chick-fil-A down in Shelby, North Carolina. But
Okay. Yeah.
he approached me and was like, "Hey, like, would you like to join us on, this big break, that Campus Crusade was doing?" And I was like, "What is this? What is it about?" And I'm like, "Well, you come down and we'll, share the gospel with other beachgoers, and share Christ with them." And I just remember looking at Chad, Eric, and I was like, "I don't know how to share Jesus with others, and I'm still figuring out who God is in my own life and where He played." And I just remember Chad's response is like, "No, no, no. I'm not asking you to come to do work. I'm asking you to come and experience. Like,
Mm.
let's dig deeper." And I was like, "Sure, free beach trip. Like, okay, that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
totally fine." And the first night we got there, Eric, um, we had a message. So one of the guest speakers, we shared part of that beach week with Clemson. So Clemson,
Okay.
University,
Mm-hmm.
they were there.
Yep.
So their crew or Campus Crusader or Crew Ministries was there, and a chaplain spoke from Clemson, and he just spoke about the prodigal son. And I had heard a few messages on the prodigal son through Crew back at Marshall, but his message was what hit me to the core, Eric, in much more depth of God's sovereignty for me. God never turned away for me or my family, regardless of Him taking my father out of the picture, my
Mm-hmm.
earthly father.
Mm-hmm.
Where my earthly father failed me, in essence, my heavenly father wasn't and never had. He provided for my mom, for my sister. We were able to make it. He sustained us. He put people in our lives in certain periods in our lives to make sure that it in a way that if we just looked up or put our head up, he was always drawing us back to him. And I felt ashamed. So like the
Mm.
prodigal son, I felt ashamed that here was God, taking care of my family, meeting the needs of my family, meeting the needs of me, and making sure that I'm okay. And what just what justified love, appreciation, or just thankful of grace can I extend to Him, knowing that I hated Him
Mm.
and I didn't understand Him, and I blamed Him for the situation, especially, Eric, economically of my family. I blamed God for a lot of these things when in essence God was always there, you know, had never hid His face for me, never hid His presence for me. And after that talk, it was about 40 minutes. We were leaving and everyone was going to across the street, Eric. There was a Baskin Robbins, so it's kind of like the hangout, like after each talk. Let's go get some ice cream and talk about the message. So um, I'm pretty extroverted or people person. Everyone's like, "Hey, Jerry, you want to go to Baskin Robbins?" I'm like, "No, I don't really want to go." And everyone's like, "What's wrong with Jerry? Is he getting sick?
Mm.
Is he like
Mm-hmm.
okay?" And
Yeah.
Chad, I just remember Chad looking at me and he said, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just need some time. He said, all right, Jared, we'll see you in the morning. So I walked down to the bottom of the pier at Daytona Beach back in March 2002 and dedicated my life to Jesus at that point.
Wow.
And since March of 2002, faith has been a journey. It's been a process.
Okay.
So yes, I'm grateful for that talk. I'm grateful for that opportunity. I'm grateful for the ministry of Cru, Kim's Crusade, for Chad Tidd, and just what that meant to me. Just helping me to draw my eyes and my presence closer to God's presence.
Yeah. We're going to take a sponsor break, and we'll be right back.
Since 1952, South Texas Children's Home Ministries has focused on healing hearts and sharing hope. Their 9 ministries focus on helping hurting children and families, all regardless of an individual's ability to pay. To find out more, visit www.stchm.org.
A lot of people that we talk to, their experience often is that they became a follower of Christ when they were a young kid. And it's different when you become a follower of Christ as an adult. I mean, college students are adults. And my story is that I grew up in a Christian home, but I really became a follower of Christ when I was an adult, when I was in college. And anyway, it's interesting to hear the difference in the stories and to hear you talk about how, as you described this story that you had heard before, the prodigal son, it was like in that moment, it wasn't just the story that was reframed. What I heard you say is that everything you understood and thought about God was reframed, even to the point of reframing your life experience and what you and your mom and your sister had gone through since your dad had passed away. That was a pretty incredible moment.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I still kind of get goosebumps thinking about, as the chaplain was wrapping up, and just, I felt, I almost felt like God was using him as a vessel to specifically like speak into me. Like, if he didn't have my attention, he had my attention loud and clear to make sure that I understood that I have always been with you. Like I've never left you or any part in that season which was most difficult for you or your family. I'd never left you, and you don't need to be ashamed to approach me, to talk to me, or to be polished or refined. Like, come to me. So at that point, my faith journey just exploded, and has exploded. Since then, it's been ups, it's been downs. It's the constant is that I am humbled and blessed more than I deserve, and I'm thankful for the way that God has used me in life and others around me to completely help. I would say help gauge my eyes, or my focus to him, just to keep back in me, kind of like a reset, always. Yeah. Almost like a parent that's trying to like have you face forward to the front of the car, or the face forward to like look like it's not a jerkful or a pull, or like a chastising thing. It's just almost like a guiding, like I'm here. Yeah. So for me, it's, I really, after that, I really explored more of just what does a faith-based relationship looks like? What does intimacy with Christ looks like? And that's when I really got into more theological, understanding of grace, and really, being able to explain, what it looks like having a relationship with Christ to my sister and to my mom. And I remember specifically, Eric, about a year after I came to faith, I went on my first mission trip with it's another paraministry of Kim's Crusade, or Cruise, called Athletes in Action. Okay. And it was a soccer ministry that I went with them to Ireland, and did soccer camps, and we played semi-pro teams while we were there, but we shared the gospel there in the Northern Republic of Ireland and southern tip of Ireland. But when I came back from that trip, um, my mom was asking me so many questions, Eric, of like, what is it like? So were you just playing soccer? Like, I played soccer in college. I mean, it wasn't nothing big. But I felt like that could be a platform for the gospel and for ministry. It was my platform,
Well,
which I
even
can get
that is new for you.
right,
Yeah,
right,
I
yes,
guess I've got to think your mom was paying attention to that. That
yeah,
you're going. I mean, soccer. Okay, you play it, but you're going to take soccer to Ireland for what?
right. You're nailing the head. You're absolutely right. She didn't really understand the inner workings of how does this work. Like, don't they have churches over there? Don't they have people to do these things? Like, why are you going
Hmm.
thousands away miles away from me, and I can't protect you. I can't. And so just part of that in the first half was reassuring her that this is what God's called me to do, and I really
Hmm.
felt in my heart I'm led to do this, and the fruit of that afterwards was leading several individuals, especially teenagers, to Jesus. And back around that, Eric, when I came home, I got to lead my mom to Christ
Oh
a
wow.
couple of months when I
Yeah.
came home, and just it really explaining the gospel to her, and just was just my mom was always a works based
Hmm.
lady. She just felt like she had to prove her worth to Jesus. She had to prove her earning or her earn God's favor. And I
Yeah.
just had to. I just had some really great conversations with my mom that what's been already done has been done and accomplished. It's finished, and entering into this relationship with Jesus,
Hmm.
you come as you are. You don't need to refine
Yeah.
who you are. Just walk into this intimacy with Him. And that was probably one of the biggest highlights for me, Eric, and just in my whole faith journey is being able to lead my mom to Jesus. You know, a year and a half after I became, after I really dedicated my life to Him, was just a refreshing part for me. So as I continued that, I thought that after I graduated, I'd be a missionary, which I told you that I went from undergrad kinesiology to grad to clinical counseling. Um, I really thought I was going to be a missionary. I had overseas, like international missionary. So I had everything laid out. I was researching different, organizations and mission, groups that I can, start applying at applications in and start the interview process.
Was
And
that something that was from your experience in Ireland? This interest in international missions, or was it related to something different?
what bit me even harder for missions was the time that I spent. Um, I'm going to make a plug for him because I know he doesn't like that I call him this, but my mentor, Charlie Bing. He was a pastor of Burleson Bible Church in Texas. He started a nonprofit organization called Grace Life Ministries,
Okay.
which trains men and women in the gospel and sharing the gospel and helping to train pastors and clergymen to share the gospel right in their very own villages and townships and areas in their local countries. So the first time I went to Africa twice, the first time I went with Charlie in a very small group, um, I just fell in love with just total self-reliant on not the comfort of the Western world, but really
Okay.
just like total reliance on Christ and provisions of like He's going to facilitate these conversations. I'm talking to a plethora of different people. I mean, it was a very high population, dense Muslim country that I was in Ghana, but it's also the southern tip of it's very. I mean, it's Christian. I mean, it's Christian as well. The lower
Hmm.
southern part of the country,
Similar to
and
Nigeria.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, man, Eric, I talking about growing in your faith. That's where I really like got in these deep conversations with with Muslims and other believers into really like what is it about this faith that I speak of in a relationship that really is important for me that I want to share it and hope that it would be an importance to you and knowing that is a constant. It's a never ending relationship. It's a constant relationship.
Hmm.
So that's what really bit my tongue and
Okay.
really tugged my heart for
Yeah.
ministry. So
All right.
so yeah, so that's more my mission type of ministry experience, or journey. But That probably subleads into questions you're going to ask about where I'm at now, but I'll let you go for it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask about how you went from you were looking at kinesiology. I imagine that you were interested in the science of it, but also probably thinking that would be a good career path, that you'd be financially secure doing that, and then to go from that to counseling, and then from counseling to where you are now. I mean, that's sort of what some would call a circuitous route. But I'm curious how God, more specifically, in your desire to follow Jesus and to listen to God's voice, the call, as you mentioned earlier, how that factored into those decisions.
Yeah. So for me, you're absolutely right. I looked at it long term as, all right, my undergrad in kines can lead me into either, a DPT program for physical therapy or occupational therapy or maybe physician assistant. Like I just was more, secure of if there was something I could do to secure my financial stability for my income and taking care of my mom and helping to sustain things at home, there would be no worry like there was with my dad's passing.
Yeah.
And, after I took I took an introduction class to, to counseling theories. And it was one of the professors in my counseling theories class, group counseling theories class. His name was Dr. David Herman. He looked right at me and he's like, you know what? You'd make a great elementary school counselor. And I was just like,
what?
This is just an intro class, okay? But I went to then work for an after-school program called Respite that focused on working with kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, unrepresented backgrounds and homes. And I fell in love with it. I felt like I could live out my faith, Eric, to these kids in it was a secular setting, Eric. It was a facility that provided state, services and stuff to, low-income families and things. But man, I enjoyed working with students. I enjoyed working with kids. So after I graduated with my master's in counseling, did I think I'd go the counseling route or school counseling? No, not at all. What happened was I got bit working as a graduate assistant in higher education for my then boss, who was my grad assistant boss. Her name was Amy Saunders. And I was doing all kinds of different programs, alcohol awareness, practice of abstinence and things. And I was just like, man, I really enjoy working with college students. Like I am one, I'm a grad student, but I really love working with college students. I mean, this is where I came to faith. This is where I came to encounter Christ, in its very core, later in life. So I accepted a counseling position for a program, a Title V grant program called TRIO, Student Support Services. And this program works with students from unrepresented backgrounds who are first generation, as I am first generation college graduate, who are, low socioeconomic students or students that may have registered disability. And I did that for 4.5 years at Marshall, and that was it. That Eric was my platform for ministry. That is what that's how God spoke to me, Eric, and saying, okay, so you got some student loans you need to pay off. There's some things we need to get, figured out. But while you're doing this, I felt like he was telling me giving me comfort not to worry about that. I will, just as he sustained and took care of my mom, my sister, and I after my dad's passing, I'm going to take care of this. So right now, I hear you being a long-term missionary, but this is your mission field right now. So focus on this. So for the last 12 years of higher education has been my platform for the gospel. That's been my mission field.
We're going to take a 60-second sponsor break, and we'll be right back. High Ground Advisors has a 90-year history of providing investment management and planned giving solutions to churches, faith-based organizations, and charitably minded individuals dedicated to transforming lives. High Ground is trusted by over 450 nonprofit clients, and we're one of them. High Ground has partnered with Baptist Standard for over 70 years by offering a comprehensive charitable giving and investment solutions model, which includes asset management, planned giving education and development, account support services, real estate and minerals management, and expert legal consultation. High Ground and the Baptist Standard share similar values, such as serving those who are called and dedicated to transforming lives and being a trusted caretaker of legacies. They also value good stewardship, helping those who desire to be good stewards of their financial resources to find creative giving solutions to fulfill that calling. They know what they do to protect, strengthen, and grow our mission is ultimately in service to the gospel. To learn more about how High Ground Advisors can partner with you or your organization, visit their website at highgroundadvisors.org. From your bio and your current role at Messiah, I'm wondering if there's a little bit of a theme there. But anyway, I want to hear more about what you're doing now
Sure.
in higher education.
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey in higher education has been, it's been a plethora of various experiences and programs. My wife, while I met my wife and embarked on this journey with her, part of that attributed to her journey as she really pursued her PhD in Bible and religion. She's now a professor at Messiah, teaching in Bible and religious studies. But for me, I started out as a counselor, worked with, unrepresented students or students who are first gen. And in that sense, for me, the last 12 years, just being able to work with college students, regardless of their background, has been exhilarating for me because it's been good to be able to share and share my own faith journey with other students, but to come alongside of them and part of their faith journey and their process as they really wrestle, question, and encounter Jesus, on in their time frame and their experience. So I went to work for Houston Baptist University as a first-year success coach and a co-coordinator of our Gen 1 program, so for first-gen students. It really was me reading through some surveys through orientation, freshman orientation we had at HBU, that a lot of students coming into a Christian institution, not all these students know Christ. Not all these students have a relationship with Jesus. So I spoke to my good friend, and he's our pastor at our home church in in Houston, Zach McCoy at Redemption Church, and was like, hey Zach, I think there's a real big opportunity here, to help minister to college students who are looking for a home church, but really to see what to discover Christ, learn their spiritual gifts, and use their spiritual gifts now, not after they graduate college, but right now, be part of the church now. And while that was great for me and Campus Crusade, Eric, I still felt like part and extension of that is a college student should be getting actively involved in ministry and being good stewards of their gifts and encountering those gifts and using those gifts for others and even those peers around them right now, not just waiting to ponder that after they graduate and they're adults. So I did that, and Zach's full was so loving to death. He's like a brother. It was like, hey, that sounds great to me. I totally trust you. Whatever you want, whenever you feel God's leading you to do, that's great. Just let me know how I can best support you, what I can do to help. He thought, in one essence, and as a plug, he had originally had me in mind to maybe coming on board as a youth pastor for the middle school and high school. Kind of exploded to, hey, there's a college ministry opportunity here, and to have his full trust in that and support. That's something that myself and my wife Rebecca, partnered with me in doing as well, as she was just as part of his ministry. We called the Vine. So we developed a college ministry called the Vine, basically from John chapter 15.
Yep.
So yeah, so that's kind of the story that we're kind of evolved in regards to ministry and serving, as a first year success coach and co-coordinator of Gen 1 program. Now it looks a little bit different because now I'm serving in the area now I'm serving in the area of finance and financial services for students, which kind of interesting what you said. It kind of all comes back to like full circle of where my journey started. But when we moved here to Central PA, Eric, I didn't have a job, and there wasn't the college and university scene here like is very limited. So unless you're
It's
in
not like Houston.
Philadelphia, right? Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
Right.
so yeah, so
Right.
unless you're like in Philadelphia, or unless you go 4 hours and you go to Pittsburgh,
Yep.
universities are going to be like far and few. So, um, the door. I mean, God opened up a door later on, after we got established and my wife started teaching here, for a role, as a director, in an office called Student Support Services. And what I do, what my office does, is my office is essentially a bridge and kind of an mediator between the financial aid office and kind of cashiers. Um, uh, you know, we're almost like a centralized billing department, but we're much more than that. We're financial literacy, we're financial counseling, helping to get students graduated with less debt to little debt, but helping them get across the finish line. And a big part of that too is helping students and parents to think not just what are the concerns of a student's financial responsibilities and obligations and obstacles while they're in college, but what are we doing after college? So not
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
while you're at Messiah, but beyond. So that's kind of that holistic support that we want to support students financially. We want to equip them, educate them, give them the resources they need, and work with various offices as well across campus so that they can graduate and make future plans as professionals, or if they want to continue in their education, that they're able to do that with all the resources and tools in their wheelhouse to be able to make those decisions, in a timely manner and in the best wisdom and discernment as possible.
And it would seem to me that of anybody that they could, or of all the people that they could have called or hired for that position, to offer that to someone who knows the value from firsthand experience, it would seem to me that you bring something to that position that God really, I guess in one sense you could say, made you for, or shaped you for, or maybe you want to say redeemed your experience for. I guess there's different ways of characterizing that, but it's interesting to me how the experience you described in the beginning of our conversation is part of who you are and where you are and what you're doing now in this part of your journey. It's just remarkable to me how God works in our lives that way.
Absolutely, Eric. I tell my wife Rebecca that never in a thousand. So first of all, plug. I hate math. I just, I mean, I sit down with my 6-year-old. I'm like, okay, so with COVID and this whole new thing, we're all doing like cyber school, homeschool, hybrid school. Like, give me a calculator and I'm gonna help you. But it's interesting to see how God uses our strengths, our weaknesses as our strengths,
Yeah.
but really gives you those tools to hone and shape you into to things that you would probably be a little bit hesitant into entering into without any prior experience, or thinking that you could bring something to the table, and really attribute to or contribute to. I would in 13. I'm going in my 13th year of higher ed. I in 13 years, Eric, could have not told you that I think my journey was going to go from here, or
Mm-hmm.
from where I was in kinesiology, all the way
Yeah.
to now student financial services, a director of student financial services. And the position, the thing that I'm truly blessed with, and have uh, been really supported by. I've got a great team. I got a great staff that I get to work with and help support. They're amazing counselors. They're amazing what they do in supporting, equipping students. Um, you know, I could not do what I do without my team. They're phenomenal individuals, and they bring a plethora of experience, to what we do in helping students. I from what this role and where I'm at now, Eric, it was a bit more transactional and more accounting and kind of reconciling. As when I stepped into and was hired for this position, they wanted someone with more, holistic retention experience, customer service experience, and kind of digging deeper into relationships with students and parents, and to, helping to fine tune what are some things that we could do financially to retain students. What are some, other obstacles, as well as finances that are really preventing students from graduating and getting them beyond graduation and into, the job market. So, you ask a question. I want to get back to this. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to. This is your show, and you're Captain Eric.
My show. Okay.
You said something before when we started this interview and we were starting our time together. But calling, I think and I believe wholeheartedly that in Christian circles today, we get very bent and distorted on what does a call look like. I think people, especially those believers who are asking and trying to figure out and really to understand, what does my call exactly look like? Well, just remember that the disciples, they had a calling, they fulfilled their call, and everywhere they went, it looked a bit different. They served in different capacities. They had various jobs and responsibilities and things that they did while sharing the gospel and while, sharing Christ and his kingdom with others. For me, my call has never been changed. I have a call to serve, students and families and share Christ with them. The setting may be different, but the call never changes. The call is still the same. So I think, as believers, we get a little bit bent sometimes to think, oh, I don't know where my call is now. I'm moving, or what am I going to do, or what does my call look like? Well, God's always going to call us to do something or to be obedient to that call, although it may look a bit different depending on the setting and time and place that you're fulfilling that. So as I just want to speak to young believers, new believers, maybe some of those believers, Eric, that are young or in college now, not to be discouraged, if your calling may look different depending on the setting or where God takes you. The call is still the same, regardless of what setting that you're in. You're still fulfilling that call.
Yeah, that's a good word. As a matter of fact, it's so good, I'm going to leave it with that. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm glad to hear your story and to know how God has been faithful to you and provided for you and your family, and how God has worked through you all these years and how God is continuing to work through you. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. I cannot thank you enough for the opportunity just to spend some time with you and to speak into this podcast, and just to anyone who's listening, just to provide a sense of hope, of strength and reassurance, that you don't have to have the title deacon, pastor, or treasurer to serve Christ where you are.
Just because a person follows Jesus doesn't mean that person is perfect. Following Jesus is a lifetime of growing more like him. Likewise, while there are followers who are more mature than others, who have spent more time growing close to Jesus than other followers, there are no followers of Jesus who are better than others. If you aren't on the way with Jesus, we invite you to check out the Follow Jesus page on the Baptist Standard website at baptiststandard.com/Follow Jesus to learn more about becoming a follower of him. If you are on the way with Jesus, we hope that this podcast has encouraged you to grow more like him. I'm Eric Black, editor of the Baptist Standard, and I'm glad you've been with us today.